The SilverHawks better be careful, because there's a storm coming. Here's your look at the new Super 7 SilverHawks Ultimates Windhammer. When Windhammer and his weather-controlling tuning forks are around, the forecast is a 100% chance of evil mayhem. This made-to-order 7-inch scale, fully articulated SilverHawks Ultimates figure of Windhammer features premium detail and comes with interchangeable heads and hands, a variety of other accessories including multiple tuning forks, weather blast effects, and soft goods tunic. We don't want to rain on your parade, but the chance to add Windhammer to your collection may not strike twice. Just before we get a closer look at Windhammer, who has the notable distinction of being the only figure from this wave who I've forgotten the name of in every single review that I've done. In fact, every single time I've tried to remember this character's name, it's drawn a blank every single time. We're going to rectify that. We're going to rectify that by first grabbing the tape measure and seeing how tall Windhammer stands. Right to the very top of his head, the figure stands. By the way, doesn't he look a little like a troll that has that fuzzy hair? Remember trolls were a big thing? I'm sure they got the idea for Windhammer from a troll. Anyways, Windhammer, first I forget his name, then I call him a troll. Either way, though, the figure stands about 7 inches in height. Or the figure in this case is 17 centimeters tall. This review marks not only the remembering of Windhammer's name, but also finishing up what was left of Wave 2 of the brand new SilverHawks Ultimates line, courtesy of the folks at Super 7. For those that have since gone back to my channel and looked around for Wave 1 and couldn't find its whereabouts anywhere, it's because we didn't actually get a Wave 1 just yet. At the time of doing these reviews, we got Wave 2, Super 7 have yet to release Wave 1, and I'm sure that's going to be changing, and I don't even know the reasoning why it was delayed, but at least we got the chance to look at Wave 2. And overall, I've been very happy with this line. Bringing back in those earlier looked at figures, and I hope you guys have had the chance to look at all of them. Here's what the figure looks like with Steel Will. Here's what the figure also looks like with Bluegrass. The second figure, in fact, we looked at here on this channel right after, if I can get this guy to stand straight, right after we looked at Monstar. I had to look at Monstar first. Monstar, of the 4 figures we looked at from Wave 2, is the tallest of the batch. Then I would say Steel Will, or you could question Bluegrass is the tallest just because he does also have the cowboy hat. Unfortunately, even though he's bigger in the cartoon, or he's a big character in the cartoon, Windhammer not only is a name that I forgot, but he happens to also be the character that's the shortest of Wave 2, and the shortest of the SilverHawks line so far. Windhammer is another figure that exceeds in the accessory department, and while he may not have episode-specific accessories, I'm using bunny quotations behind the scenes, like Steel Will we looked at earlier, he has at least the things I would want Windhammer to come included with, specifically his tuning fork, and specifically some effects that can attach onto the end of such fork. The figure also comes included with what I feel to be a superior head sculpt than the one we're looking at right now. It happens to be also the one that was packaged in the tray separately. It happens to also be the one that's decapitated from the rest of Windhammer's body. We're going to be fixing that shortly. Before we do that, though, let's have a look at the other things first. The more uninteresting things, not the pointing hand, but the more uninteresting things, is that the figure comes included with closed fists. Unless you're planning to have your figures always in a punching pose, I don't find I ever really display these figures at all. And I'm not just even talking Super 7 stuff. Any figures, I tend not to display with closed fists. That's me. That's the thing I stand on. It's fine and good to include the plastic, but I almost even feel like, especially with a character that's known for wielding a tuning fork with both his hands, I don't know if I would have included these. I would have used the plastic for something more suitable. Anyways, we'll put that to the side. I did bring in one of them at least. Here's the other one. Figure also comes included with pointing hands, so he can point at you when he's about to summon a storm. I like the look of these hands. These hands are fine. Close fists, no dice. Not for me, at least. The figure also comes included with gripping hands. Now, really, to be fair, he does have sort of gripping hands right now for holding the tuning fork, but if you want a better grip of your fork, then he has these hands. He also so happens to have these hands, too, and while you think for yourself for a second, wait a minute, are those identical hands? Look at the way they've actually slotted the pegs down below. These hands actually hinge back and forth this way. These hands, on the other hand, literally on the other hand, swivel the opposite way. Some could say a little bit of a waste of plastic, but again, you get gripping hands. I would much rather take these over the likes of punching fists. All right, I've talked enough about that. The figure also comes included, of course, with this fork, a big giant tuning fork. It's molded what looks to be with all dark gray plastic. It doesn't look like it's actually been painted. It looks rather instead that they molded it in this color. The tuning fork looks like it does in the cartoon. It doesn't really, again, have any real detailing or anything to that. It's literally just a tuning fork. He whacks it, it vibrates, and then he uses it to summon off waves and storms. Like for all examples, the things that he comes included with as well. Like he comes with this cool lightning effect. The lightning effect has been done here using a translucent yellow plastic. It's fairly soft plastic too. And if you notice on the end of it, that's going to be one thing that's consistent with all these effects. On the bottom of it, there's holes. Those holes, as you can probably imagine, fit right over the tuning forks, and then he can summon electricity. Or if you'd rather something instead, the figure also comes included with a swooshing effect. Let's just flip this around. Just attach this onto. It's sort of molded in the same sort of yellow plastic, but it's obviously detailed in such a way that it looks like he's swishing the fork. Or it could be also that he's bringing down the tuning fork. Not bring down the hammer. I do like the look of this, although it's not my favorite of the three. He does also come included with this, which is an ice effect. The ice, you can see he has all these cool little pebbles, these stones of ice, and he's shooting them out from the end of the tuning fork, which we're going to do right now. That just slots onto the end. Unfortunately, though, this of all the three is the heaviest. And if you're not actually having him wielding the tuning fork with both his hands, there's really no way that he's going to probably be able to hold this. You simply just take the figure. We're going to stick with the hands we have for right now, but you can easily then swap them out. Just attach the tuning fork. Now, what I would certainly say is also with this specific accessory, I guess we will want to have it attached this way. With this specific accessory, I would certainly advise using the gripping hand, because the way that the ice is as heavy as it is, it's going to add a lot of weight to the figure, and you definitely want to have as best of a grip as you can get it. This concerns me. While it's nice to have this as something that goes along with the tuning fork, I think the one thing it's going to ultimately do, though, if you don't have a way to prop this up, I think it's going to wreak havoc on the joints of the shoulders, and it's going to wreak havoc on the joints, on the elbow joints too. And it's going to ultimately cause the figure to have loose arms down the road. I think if anything, I was going to display the figure, I was going to probably display him with the electricity, the lightning effect. First of all, it's the lightest of the three. It's about the same lightness, I suppose, as this. And it's obviously not going to cause me any problems when it comes to displaying this figure. If you go the route of doing this, use the gripping hands, and then second to that, I would use like a little, like a clear base, something that looks a little bit more see-through and invisible somewhat on your shelf to have that propped up. Because without that, I really, again, think it's way too heavy to be displayed along with Windhammer. That being said, let's go ahead and just remove that for right now. And we're going to go ahead and just put that to the side. The other thing that the figure comes included with, as already mentioned, he comes included with a swapped out head. I like this head much more, but I think in both the cases, the heads are really good. This being really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is the second wave. We already have a first wave that's somewhere in limbo right now. See what I did there? But, first out the gate, technically, of these first figures that we've looked at, I've been pretty impressed with all the Super7 SilverHawks stuff. I mean, normally when it has come to, like, the Thundercat stuff, for example, the earlier Lion-O, I think Lion-O needs an improvement. He needs a version 2. Oh, I guess technically we did get a version 2. He needs a version 3. Right out the gate, all of this SilverHawks stuff has been good. Really, really good. And in this case, you can see Windhammer has two different distinct head sculpts. One is the closed mouth, where you can still see his fangs hanging out the tops of his mouth. But face-wise, like the eyes are very similar to one another, as well as the ears. But does that not look like one of those trolls where you would, again, just rub it against your sleeve and mess up the hair? No? Maybe me? Maybe it's just me. Okay. You can change the heads out. Simply, you're just going to hold on to the body and just carefully remove it from the ball joint. While you're doing this, I would certainly say, make sure that you're holding on to a plastic piece. Don't hold on to the tunic, because if you are pulling the head off, you may be also pulling this down and stretching this out of shape. The fabric also, by the way, I guess we could kind of take a break from actually putting a head on for right now. The tunic that they've used is actually very similar to a chamois. The sort of material that they've used very much reminds me of like a car chamois. It's a soft enough material, at least, that it's not going to cause problems when it comes to the figure's articulation. Of course, more of the limitations of the articulation are going to come from the fact that now with his hair off to the side like this, you're really not going to be able to rotate the head. But what we're going to do is we're going to pop this back onto the ball joint. If you're having problems, by the way, doing this, obviously, as I always say, you can heat up the head, heat up the neck with either a hair dryer or run a few passes in hot water. And that should be enough to soften up the joint. But now we've pretty much made the articulation in the head null and void. I mean, there's really no, you can move it a little bit this way. Let's just make sure I've got the head all the way on the ball joint. There we go. You can rotate the head this way and this way, but that's as far as it's really going to go. I may even just want to make sure I've got that in all the way. But I like this head sculpt a lot more. It's certainly going to show well, I think, a lot better when you've got the tuning fork in his hand. And I think you can get some really cool figure photography out of Windhammer here. Head sculpt, though, fantastic. Again, when you look at the hair itself obviously is blowing off to the side, but it's pretty much painted the exact same way as this one, although it's got a little bit maybe of extra darker color that they've added in there. The tunic itself, already mentioned, sort of has like a chamois feel to it, but they haven't technically sculpted a body underneath that. It's only done it here in plastic, so they didn't have to go and paint, or in this case, leave the paint off. They've just used the plastic color. He does have the belt. Like, I'm just going to move his arm out of the way here for a second. If you look at the back of the belt, though, the belt seems to attach by peg. I'm not going to detach it only just because I know if I warp the peg, I'm going to have a harder time to get that back in place. And for the simple sake, I think, of being able to put this over top of the figure's body, because he has sleeves, I think it was a lot easier. They decided to put a Velcro strip right here. Now, looking at it right here, you can see where that strip is. When you look at it from the front, you're never going to notice it was even there. But they probably put the Velcro there not so that you can undress Windhammer, you perverts, but more so just so that they could actually fit it over top of the figure's body, especially considering he's got really large-looking arms and hands. The lower half of the figure's body is just a continuation of that same molded plastic. The bottoms of his feet, for some reason, remind me of Alf. I don't know why. Alf, mind you, if he let toenail cutting day skip a few weeks, but it definitely has some really interesting looking sculpting to his feet. Very tree trunk sized legs. He does also have pegals on the undersides of his feet, but once again, already mentioned, Super7 has, I don't know, they seem to have a problem against putting display stands, including display stands with any of their figures. The Simpsons haven't gotten them, Thundercats haven't gotten them, and now SilverHawks have not gotten them. They have pegs there. They sort of tease the idea that the peg stand, a display stand, could be used, and yet they continue not to include a display stand. For the figure's articulation, again, we've already mentioned the fact that the figure's head is going to be a little more limited. Let's get that all the way on there. But at least the arms do come out 90 degrees easily on this guy. You can also rotate the arms forward, rotate them back. The figure has, oh, there we go. I'm going to have to fix that later. Figure has a, oh no, let's just pop that back onto the ball joint. Let's get that going. Come on now. Come on now. There's no way that we're going to be able to look at the rest of this review without getting this guy back on the ball joint. I had heated the head, but I probably didn't have that plastic soft enough. It probably started to cool before I started reviewing again. Anyways, so like the head does have limited articulation. Arms do come out, again, 90 degrees. You can take the arms, rotate them forward, and rotate them back. The figure doesn't have a bicep. Well, let me just roll up the sleeve here. The figure I should say it does have a bicep swivel. Single hinge only on the elbow, but the elbow at least does have rotation here. It's strange, really, that he does have rotation in the bicep and also manages to rotate at the forearm, but he does have it at least in two places. Hands hinge back and forth. You can also take the hands and rotate them all the way around. If I was to lift up the tunic, what you would see underneath is an articulate upper torso. I mean, a little harder to kind of obviously get in there. And unfinished, you can see the top of his torso is. Legs do split out. You can take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. Possessing only a single hinge in the lower leg, you can rotate the leg at least back and forth this way, all the way around technically if you wanted to. And there's once again ankle articulation, both up and down, and ankle rocker back and forth as well. I feel bad. I feel bad. Again, like I forgot this poor guy's name. 3 reviews in, and I'd forgotten this guy's name every single time. I'm sure probably of you guys may have already noticed that. Windhammer, though, a nice looking figure. Just to once again bring in, there we go, Monstar, his big boss. Yeah, I do like the look of these figures on the shelf. Eventually, I will get around to picking up the throne for Monstar, because I think that's the route I'm going to be going when it comes to displaying this guy. And I'm going to have, of course, Windhammer displayed right next to him. Windhammer has some really cool stuff going for him, and he's one of the only few figures. He is the only figure of Wave 2, and I'm thinking so far of the SilverHawks line in general, that's going to actually have a real fabric outfit. I mean, really, when you think about it, all the other figures have had just straight plastic bodies. Windhammer is the exception, not only being the figure that I forgot his name of, but he's also the only figure that actually has a real fabric tunic. How about that? Something I had actually mentioned in the other earlier looked at SilverHawks figures is that each of the figures seem to have something loose about them. I think so far, Bluegrass is probably the loosest of the batch in the loose forearms that he has, but I didn't really touch base on that at all when we looked at Windhammer here. Here in final looks, gives me, of course, as always, a chance to go back and add on things. He does have loose forearms, specifically the way that he's hinged in the elbow area. Of course, the way I've got him displayed right now, as cool as this may look, I don't know if I want to display him like this, simply just because his forearm is already starting to develop looseness, and just a little bit of tapping on my part, even if I was to sneeze, I think it would be more than enough to swing his arm down. I'm hoping it's going to stay like this, at least for the rest of the final looks. I would certainly encourage as well, already talking about the looseness of joints, probably not display this guy with the ice effect. I think things like that, something that Super7 should have realized when they packaged along with the figure. It may look good, but it's not something practically that can be displayed along with the figure. You're only just asking for trouble, I think, by adding such a heavy effect on the end of a tuning fork. You know it's going to cause problems with a figure long term. And already with the joints being loose, at least on one form, the one I just so happen to be using right now for the tuning fork, I don't know if I want to be displaying him at all with that freeze effect. So instead, I'm going to display him, as you see right now, with the electricity, but I think I'm going to take the smarter approach of actually having him holding it with both of his hands. As good as this may look, I don't think it's going to last having this always with his arm always up. The figure looks fantastic though. Consistently, as we've looked at all the Super7 SilverHawks Ultimate figures, I have been impressed all across the board. I can't think of any one figure from any of the 4 figures we've looked at from SilverHawks Wave 2 that I've said to myself, I really wish he could have been better. There have been, of course, nitpicks. I've said little small things. Steel Will, for example, didn't come included with the display stand. Bluegrass, for example, had loose arm. Monster, I don't think I really had any real issues. I mean, I had a difficult time to attach the head, but that goes with the territory. If you're having any difficult time to attach any of these heads, not only just the stuff from Super7, but any figures, heat it always in hot water first. If you feel there's resistance, don't fight it, because there's always the risk that the plastic may break. Now, I haven't had any horror stories, at least myself collecting any of the Super7 stuff. I have heard horror stories from other collectors that have said, I bought blank Super7 figure and the peg broke, or like the joint came right off the arm. I haven't had any issues so far. I think the plastic that they've used is also seeming to be better and better. If I was to say compare this with, I haven't picked them up yet, but like the Disney's Ultimates Robin Hood. I've heard horror stories about the Disney's Robin Hood from the Disney's Ultimate line. The peg on the neck snapping the moment you change the head. The plastic seems to be a good enough quality with all the SilverHawks figures, short of maybe just struggling to get them back onto the ball joints. I haven't had really any issues where I thought to myself that the plastic was going to break. The joints were going to be developing looseness, which is a disappointing thing always to get these figures out of packaging and immediately being treated to loose joints. But I haven't had any issues where I thought to myself, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to be breaking whatever I'm about to do. I haven't had any of those thoughts pop in my head at all looking at the Wave 2 SilverHawks stuff so far. What do you guys think of Windhammer? Let me know down below in the comment section. And really, of the 4 figures we've looked at from the SilverHawks Ultimates line, which one would you say is your favorite? I think my favorite is probably either Bluegrass or Monstar. I mean, I still like the look of Windhammer, but those 2 are my top 2 favorites. What are yours? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, as well, if you guys are interested to get any of these SilverHawks and you haven't had any luck finding them so far, click the link down below in the video description. That will take you on over to Entertainment Earth's website. That's where I picked them up. You guys pick them up. They're probably in stock still right now over on their website. Also as well, if you enjoyed this video, why not throw it a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly on board to see more, there may be also some more I know I already gave it away. I gave it away when we looked at Steel Will. We are also going to be looking at the new Super7 Ultimates G.I. Joe line. Yes. Being a big fan of G.I. Joe, growing up, loving G.I. Joe, I am super excited for having a look at that line. But yeah, we are wrapping up things right now for SilverHawks until eventually we get ourselves Wave 1 and Wave 3, kind of bookending on both the sides. There are still going to be Super7 stuff coming your way. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.